I used to walk around my city late at night. Most times I would leave my house without much of a plan, often just wandering around the neighborhoods and businesses until I decided to go back. It was my usual routine on nights I couldn't sleep, and although the area where I lived had a fair amount of crime, I never felt unsafe. For reference, I'm a guy. One time I left around 1:30 a.m. and headed toward the shopping center. I like to listen to podcasts, so I had my earbuds in and was walking with my head down. Out of the blue, I got this watching me feeling. I took a look around, but I didn't see anyone. There weren't any cars around, though the spot I was passing through had enough of a glow from streetlights and signs that I could see there was no one near me. I continued on my way without giving it a second thought. About 15 minutes later, I was nearing the far edge of the shopping center when the feeling came back. This time, when I looked around, I saw a girl a little ways behind me. She was on the phone and walking the same direction as me. She was still pretty far back and looked to be in her early 20s. I ditched the earbuds so I could hear a little more aware of my surroundings and kept going. I figured she was probably just walking home drunk, but I wanted to be able to hear if she came up behind me. I was a little surprised when she caught up to me. I hadn't been watching, so she must have started speed walking to get to me as quickly as she did. I moved to the side so she could pass. Instead of going in front of me, she fell in step and walked next to me. Like I first thought, she was a few years younger than me, but looked a little strung out. Her hair and makeup were kinda crazy, and she was wearing a short skirt and t-shirt, despite it being really cold. She asked for money, then started telling me some far-fetched story about how she'd been kicked out of her apartment and needed help. I wasn't buying it and was trying to figure out how to lose her when I noticed she was looking around a lot. Specifically, she was looking at a spot not too far ahead from us. That sent a red flag up for me. Against my better judgment, I kept walking in that direction. Right when we reached the last building in the row, a man stepped out from around the corner. I tried to ignore him, but he came right up to us and started talking. He looked nervous too. Although they didn't say anything, it was clear they knew each other. The guy kept telling me to stop and talk to him. The guy kept on following me after that, and I did my best I could do to blow him off till he demanded that I stop. There was nowhere else to go, and I knew he wasn't going to back off, so I stopped and said, "What do you want, man? I don't really feel like talking." He said, "You don't have a choice," and he showed me the gun he had in the front pocket of his pants. He told me to give him some money. I told him I didn't have any on me. I really didn't. So he said to empty everything from my pockets onto the ground. All I had were my keys and phone, so I set those down and stepped back. The girl picked them up and shoved them in her purse. Then she went through my pockets and felt around to make sure I wasn't hiding anything else. Now, getting robbed is definitely scary, though I felt all along they never planned on shooting me. The thing that happened next is what stuck with me. The guy told me to face away from them and lay down on my belly. He said not to get up till he counted to 100. And then he said, "Don't call the cops, dude." I told him I wouldn't. And he said, "I'm not screwing around, Joe," my real name. "I know where you live." And then he gave me my accurate address. I heard them run away. I stayed there with my nose on the pavement for a good 20 minutes to make sure they were gone. I imagine they could have been watching me for a while to find out where I lived, but to this day I can't figure out how they found out my name. So I live in a rather quiet, modest suburban area, quite isolated and a very safe neighborhood, so I wouldn't think of any crime happening here, as nearly everyone knows each other. Anyway, one summer evening, I was kicking a ball around outside with my cousin. I played soccer. As a kid, it was around 6 p.m., and I happened to kick it over the fence on the lawn of our neighbor across the road, who we were pretty close friends with. As I go to grab it out of the bush, I notice their lounge curtains slightly open and the TV going. I do a quick peek to see what's on the TV, and I clearly remember seeing like a wedding ceremony being on TV. Then noticed it for a second, someone standing and watching, so I think the dad is obviously home as his van is sitting in the driveway. I decide that I might go knock on their door and ask my friend to come out and play some soccer. But then I think it's going dark soon, so maybe not, and he probably isn't home anyways. Also, he would usually be playing outside too. About 20 minutes and many kicks later, my cousin boots it over the side gate, so I hop over, as they're cool with us getting our balls back. This time I see his bedroom window hanging wide open. I look in while I walk past to retrieve the ball, but his room's empty, lights off, thinking strange. I shrug it off, think his dad's airing the room out or something. So as soon as I go back to the front yard to exit, I notice the lounge light and TV is turned off, but the curtain's fully closed and the house looks completely desolate with everything off. I found it a little strange, but don't really think nothing of it. So it's starting to get dark, and we go home inside and have dinner and end the day as normal. Early the next morning, I wake up to find police at the property and to the news that the whole family had been out of town yesterday and they had been burglared. The burglar stole valuables such as jewelry, photos, clothes, car parts, devices, also personal home DVDs and CDs missing too. While most rooms were ransacked and trashed, the clothes everywhere, and the pet mouse was even missing. The police also found a kitchen knife in the lounge, and the bedroom also had a large knife sitting on the bench, top next to the front door. I remember my friend told me all their personal home DVDs and their wedding, kids' birthdays, stuff like that, all stolen, and cases lying around empty. I gave my statement to the police and they took my fingerprints, which I think helped identify them. They caught him around a week later. If I remember correctly, they said he had a record for aggravated burglary and assault. I felt pretty shocked and quite freaked out. So, to think I was so close to knocking on the door while he was in the house, much also felt bad that I didn't pay much attention and could have said something to someone, but possibly avoided a dangerous situation. It still gives me the chills to think about it. I'm just glad I didn't encounter him. I used to work for a corporation that owned a chain of convenience stores as the training specialist for the district. I know that doesn't sound too enthralling, but basically all new employees for the stores came to me for training, and I would also go to other stores occasionally if need be. That being said, on to the encounter. I was working later than normal one night, training a girl for a night shift. Day and night shifts work differently, and I knew how to run the store day, night, overnight. It was also, I'd say, around 8 or 9 p.m., and her shift was ending, so it was time for her to close down her register, and as she was in the back of the office, I was still out front in case customers came in, and in strolls a short Mexican man. I give him the "may I help you" routine, and he whispers, "please call the police." I barely make it out, so I ask him, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" And he says, "please call the police," and pulls out a pocket knife and shows it to me. At this point, the trainee sees him on the camera and comes out. She didn't notice the knife, but is taken aback when she does notice it. So she's behind me, freaking out. And keep in mind, I'm like 6'3", 260 pounds, so I laugh at the guy and say, "if you're going to rob me, you're going to need something bigger than that." And he replies, "no, please call the police," and he proceeds to slit his wrists on the front counter in front of me and the trainee. Once that happened, I said, "no man, stop, I'll get you some help and some paper towels, just calm down. No matter how big you are, no one wants to see someone kill themselves." So I tell the trainee to go back and call the police while I get some towels for his. As soon as I turn around, someone walks in, and the guy with the knife turns to him, blood squirting, and I told the other customer to run. The customer had saw a police officer at the stoplight right as he pulled in, so he ran out there and waved him down. As soon as the Mexican man saw this, he walked outside. Apparently the trainee's call went in too fast, because next thing I know, 3 cops pull in, guns drawn, yelling at him to get down. They wrestle with him to get the knife. An ambulance pulls up and they whisk him away. Never saw that guy again, but I hope he got his life figured out. This happened to me last year on my birthday. I had a few friends round to sleep in my 6-man tent. Whilst I was setting up the tent, my dad came into the garden and told me and my friends to be careful, as he had seen a shady man looking in a baseball cap, slowly walking up and down my street like he was checking out our house. It was about 1 a.m. when me and my friends were just sitting on the patio at the table, just talking about random stuff, when I heard rustling in my neighbor's garden. I didn't find this too unusual because it was the summer. I lived in a rural area of the UK, and we had hedgehogs living nearby. Then I noticed the shape of somebody's body emerge from the bush. It was a man in a baseball cap. One of my friends asked, "What are you doing?" He was doing there and stuff. But there was no answer. He asked again, and he chuckled and left through my neighbor's gate. It was later on, about 4 a.m., and most of my friends were asleep except for me and my slightly older friend, who was in the same year as me in school. We were whispering to each other as we were trying not to wake up everyone else. I heard my neighbor's fence rattle as if someone had hopped over it. A few seconds later, we see a figure move past the window of the tent. I could barely make it out, but I distinctly remember seeing a hat in the moonlit window. He moved around to the back of the tent, so we decided to wake everyone up and run back inside my house and into the living room. A good half an hour passed when I heard police sirens outside. This wasn't possible as my mom was asleep and my dad was working nights. I looked outside to see 3 police officers in the garden where the tents were, and my neighbor talking to another officer. After a few minutes of watching through my back door window, the police walked out to the garden with a man in his early 40s in handcuffs. I saw my neighbor and he gestured for me to come outside. My friends followed behind and we spoke to the police. He said that he was getting a glass of water from his kitchen and he saw a security light turn on in his garden. He quickly glanced over and saw a man hop over his fence and into the garden. He then called the police and said they would come over. After telling me this, a police officer walked over and informed me that the man they arrested was a burglar who had broken into multiple houses in the local area. What he said next still makes me shiver. They said they found him crouched down in the corner of the tent with a large knife. He then advised me and my friends to get our stuff and sleep in the living room. By this time my mom had been woken up by all the commotion and she had been given the same information. She called my dad and told him what happened. I don't think I will ever sleep in a tent again. Now looking back on my childhood, I had a lot of creepy experiences, but this one still makes me nervous. I was about 17 years old, and it was summer, had officially begun for us. One afternoon, I was watching some TV when there was a knock at the door, thinking it could be my new clothes that I ordered, but instead, a 6'4" older man was standing on my doorstep. "Hello, miss. May I borrow a cup of sugar?" said the creepy old man. Even though it's a pretty innocent question to ask, he said it with a creepy smile. I told him no politely and locked the front door quickly and immediately called my mom. She told me that she would come home from the store soon, lock the door, and don't answer the door to anyone who I didn't know. Once I was done talking to my mom, I looked out the window and saw that the old man was still standing on the doorstep. A few weeks passed by without incident. I quickly forgot about the creepy guy who wanted to borrow the sugar from me. Then one night my parents went out for a dinner date and told me the usual, "Lock the door, don't do anything crazy." About 10 minutes passed when our house phone rang. I walked across the room and picked up the phone to hear, "Do you have any sugar now?" I dropped the phone in shock and locked all the windows and our back door, even though it's usually locked. I was so freaked out, and I was praying someone was playing a prank on me. Whoever thought it would be funny to make me have a panic attack. I called my parents, but they didn't answer their phone, making me feel even more nervous. I kept the phone with me all night, all times, and took one of the kitchen knives with me in case he decided to break into the house. The house was still, terribly still, when there was a knock at the door. At first, ignoring it, I hoped it would be my parents looking for their keys, but it wasn't. I looked out through the window and saw the old man holding a glass measuring cup on my doorstep, smiling like nothing was wrong. It was 10:15 p.m. He knocked on the door a few more times, went to the back door, and I heard him moving the doorknob, and came back around again. He stared out the door for 5 minutes, and then he left my yard and walked into the night. When my parents came home, I told them everything that happened word for word. My dad called the police, who watched our street for 24 hours. The next day, my dad bought a security system for our house. I never saw that old man again, and no one else in the neighborhood had any experiences with him. He only wanted me.